The State of the State tonight.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Well, actually last night, but we're going to talk about it tonight. Great to have you in. Thanks very much. There's a lot going on. The Red Sox are looking for a manager. Dan McGowan, I think, put in his piece tonight, today, in the Boston Globe online, that he would like to be a candidate for that. We'll see if he can graduate from his Little League prowess to that. I don't know, those kids think he's kind of rough on them, so we'll figure that one out down the line. Great to have you aboard again. Did I say that twice? I say it all the time because it's true. It's never cliche. We're going to hustle tonight. I'm going to forego some of the network coverage of Washington only because I've got great minds here who I think will provide better content. But here's the headline from today. The impeachment process comes to its last formality in the House of Representatives as Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, issues the articles of impeachment for a final vote and names the 7 House managers, and they are sans Congressman David Cicilline, who was well rumored to be in the mix for this. I didn't realize, actually, until I focused on it a little bit, what kind of status House manager for an impeachment case brings. But she did some interesting thinking when it comes to this, and we'll talk to our guys about it. Joe Fleming, our pollster, and Ted Nesi, of course, from WPRI.com, and Nesi's Notes, and incredible Sunday show on business, and all sorts of things. Are you surprised? Welcome, guys. Happy New Year to both. You were here last week, so
yeah, I love it.
Double happy.
I began my year with you.
What do you think about McGowan, by the way, with the Red Sox? You think he's got a shot?
Well, I think we traded him to the Globes. For a player to be named later.
I wonder if his ears are ringing. Either at tape time. Something tells me he'll be watching.
Well,
this.
I don't know. I just always worried about a roid scandal with him, so we sent him to Boston. I wasn't shocked only because in the last week or so, people in the Cicilline world had kind of telegraphed to me he didn't want it. Now, I was not born yesterday. He may have known he wasn't getting it, and so they wanted to put a bug in my ear that, well, that's fine, I don't want it at all. But the case for not wanting it would be David Cicilline has been very out front on impeachment. He's been on network shows constantly talking about it. He's on the Judiciary Committee. And he is always a politician who's been concerned. He doesn't want voters in Rhode Island to think he's gone Washington and that's all he cares about. So he may want to spend some time, especially with the possibility of a seat going away in a couple of years, on issues that might resonate a little more bread and butter stuff here.
I think your first is on the money. I think I don't want people to think I've gone Washington thing. I mean, he has worked very hard to be what really has been, Joe, the top Democratic go-to spokes guy running around the cable networks on a pretty consistent basis.
He's out there all the time. He's on the media all the time. I think he also wants to make sure it doesn't hurt him locally. And I think by not taking it or not being asked to be on the impeachment, it doesn't hurt him at all locally. It's not going to have any effect at him all with the vote.
Why would it? What damage is done in Rhode Island for David Cicilline being on the House manager team?
It's not going to do any damage. I'm saying it's not going to hurt him at all by not being on it. I'm saying that, does he want to be known as Mr. Impeachment, as Ted mentioned me off the air before? This gives him more time to spend on issues affecting Rhode Island and his district, which I think people believe he's done a very good job in over the years.
Well, listen, I thought from his role on the House Judiciary that he was very effective.
Yeah, he got national plaudits for being more effective than a lot of his colleagues.
Perhaps too effective. Because the team that she has set up, all of whom are very articulate and who have court experience and prosecutorial experience, it seems like she wanted to kind of low key it and take the for lack of a better term, prosecutorial flamboyance out of this thing a little bit. I mean, Schiff is unavoidable.
Right.
Nadler is unavoidable. And the two of them have been kind of the stars of banging away, right? So maybe she was just trying to mitigate some of that.
Well, don't forget also there have been, we know from reporting from the Washington reporters that I've confirmed separately that she has clashed with David Cicilline at times, Nancy Pelosi. She did not originally support him to join her leadership team. She apparently had some sharp words for him about his TV appearances in a caucus meeting. A little, sass back at him for maybe, enjoying the limelight a little too much, maybe focusing a little too much on the partisan stuff that gets you booked. So, I think they certainly, get along, and he certainly has a prominent role. But I don't necessarily see him as 100% Pelosi's guy either, which might have been part of the calculus.
So the people reportedly, according to polls nationally, Mr. Pollster, say they want a fair trial that includes witnesses.
Correct.
So what happens if the Senate fights that the entire way?
Well, I think if the Senate fights that, it's going to hurt some of the Republicans who are in states that have elections this year. Some of the, for example, Colorado, sort of a purple type state, where the Republican there, that could actually affect him in his election. So I think the Republicans have to be very careful there. They still control the Senate, but if they do this incorrectly, it could affect them in the 2020 election.
The pace of this is going to be interesting. History tells us that the Bill Clinton trial didn't have witnesses at the start either, but midstream they called for them. I'm guessing they're going to have to do that.
It seems like everything's pointing that way, and if anything, it seems like Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell are now trying to game out how they deal with witnesses. Do they bring in Hunter Biden about his Ukraine thing and all of that to try to counter John Bolton or somebody else coming in who'd be presumably damaging somewhat to the president's case? But I think Joe's right. I think you have both Republicans in swing states who really need to be careful and seem bipartisan, seem above it all, and just going the party line isn't good for them. No. And also I think you have a couple Republicans, at least a couple with their eye on the history books, who want to make sure, wait a minute, this might be looked at closely in the future. I want to make sure I was seen as a statesman in this moment.
I also think if I'm the Republicans, I'm going to wait till after the Democrats put on their case. And if it's not that damaging, you don't call Hunter Biden. You just let this go to a vote and get it over with right away, knowing you're going to win. But if there's a lot of damage, I think then they're going to try to go with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden.
There's some late info here, on the Les Parnev thing and, the congressional candidate in Connecticut and the texting, plotting, at least surveilling or thinking about surveilling the Ukrainian ambassador, Ivanovich, which kind of starts to resolve that mystery. I mean, there's a lot still that's fluid in this particular saga, it seems to me. Now, 3 senators are going to have to sit for this trial while they're trying to win Iowa. How does that play?
Well, obviously, they're not going to be in Iowa. They're going to be in Washington, D.C. The one thing they do have is these people have some money. They can invest their money into their media, their organizations in the
airplanes.
state. And airplanes.
No, because a lot of them are saying that they're going to do a lot of shuttle jumping back and
They're
forth.
going to have to.
Yeah.
But also their organizations. In Iowa, it's a get out the vote because you've got to go to a caucus. You're not just going to the voting machine, voting and leaving. You're there for a couple of hours. So a lot of it's ground game. And that's not the candidates. That's the organization.
And of course, they're not going on a silent retreat with the monks, right? They're going to be at the center of the biggest national story happening. And so one of the things that's been so interesting as you listen to operatives who worked in the campaigns that have already dropped out is they say it used to matter, what'd you focus on to win Iowa? The Des Moines Register, the local media there. What'd you focus on New Hampshire? Are you on WMUR? Now they say the nightly cable coverage drives vastly more of how the voters, which candidates they see as credible and all that, even in Iowa and New Hampshire that get all that up close attention. So it could be that having this prominent role, I'm sure they'll all be trying to get sound bites on the air and have moments in the impeachment trial if they can, or in the reactions to it, could help those candidates, keep them in the forefront.
Well, remember, the senators don't say a word during this entire thing in process. So going to be fascinating. So in the meantime, a little clip here from last night where Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren having a little trouble getting along.
Beat an incumbent Republican congressman.
And I said I was the only one who's beaten an incumbent Republican in 30 years.
Well, 30 years ago is 1990, as a matter of fact. But I don't know that that's the major issue of the day. I think what the major issue of the day is, does anybody in their right mind think that a woman cannot be elected president? That's enough. Nobody believes that. If Hillary Clinton got 3 million votes, more votes than Trump. So who believes that a woman can't win? Of course a woman can win.
The weirdest part of this, can a woman win controversy stemming from some casual conversation that those two had a year ago that's now been leaked out. She is holding steady to the idea that he said a woman couldn't win. He denied it. It was a very weird question in the debate last night where one of the panelists, after Bernie denied it, turned to Elizabeth Warren and ignored what Bernie had to say and just asked the question, so what do you think about what he said? Which I think threw the whole thing off balance a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
It's very silly, right?
It really does not have a big impact on how people feel about the candidates. The one thing that could happen is if these two start going after each other, the benefactor is going to be Joe Biden, because they're going to just keep dividing the progressive vote. And if they get really mad at each other, if one of them happens to drop out, they may not go to the other one. They may go to Joe Biden or another candidate, Pete Buttigieg.
And
optics matter, right? She didn't shake his hand.
Yeah, which and that goes viral more. I think that went more viral than anything else that happened last night. Was that no handshake thing? And also, one of the smartest things I saw some pundits say about this is it's starting to remind them of the 2016 Republican primary, where remember all the candidates were scrapping all the time among themselves, but not taking on Donald Trump, thinking, oh, he's so unusual that he'll implode, and then it'll be among us, so I'm fighting among ourselves. Well, lo and behold, Donald Trump's the president. And people are saying, oh, Joe Biden, he's old, he kind of can seem doddery in the debate sometimes, so he'll just collapse of his own accord. So Elizabeth Warren has to fight Bernie, and Mayor Pete has to fight and all that. But it could just be that they're just helping Joe Biden get a smooth path, and the votes are about to start.
Well, I think the other thing, too, is simply a lot of these candidates are really concerned that if they go after each other, it's going to hurt them in the end. It's going to help Donald Trump, whoever the nominee is for the Democrats, because they've been beating up on each other so long.
But Biden continues to grow, even though his performance in the debate's not stellar. But I was watching this thing last night, and I'm thinking, Biden-Klobuchar as the ticket. She doesn't. She can't get there. It seems. But I just think her Midwest prowess,
right.
Her steady hand. Yeah. She is a woman.
Even surviving this long. Look at all the better-known people who've dropped out already.
What's your pollster instinct say about that?
That would be attractive for the Democratic Party. Woman, Midwest. I think if Biden is the nominee, you want somebody from the Midwest. So I think she does play to that. But then again, we've seen many candidates who are candidates for president come up with vice presidents you never even think of.
Yeah, like what? Gina Raimondo?
Sarah Palin?
When we come...
Oh, don't fan that flip.
I can see Alaska from right here. We'll be right back, and we'll get to the state of the state, which is what we intended to do. Stay with us. Okay, Eyewitness News coverage of the state of the state last night.
Our economy is as strong today as it's been in a generation.
Strong, but not enough. That's how Governor Gina Raimondo described the state of Rhode Island in her address Tuesday night. A major focus of that speech, education, especially in light of the recent state takeover of Providence Public Schools.
I also want every Rhode Islander to know that our work in education is absolutely not limited to the city of Providence. We are every bit as focused on improving outcomes for every child in every school district across our state.
In order to do that, the governor is again proposing $30 million to support students and teachers statewide, a more than 50% increase in the number of public pre-K seats. And in terms of higher education, she has proposed making the Promise Scholarship, which offers free tuition at CCRI, permanent.
I love the ideas. All of the initiatives were good ones. But you have to look at where the funding is going to come from and evaluate it on that basis.
One of the governor's proposals that both House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello and Senate President Dominic Ruggerio supported was one to make Rhode Island the first state in the country to be 100% powered by renewable energy by the end of the decade.
Both the Senate and the House has been on the forefront of alternative energy for the past 10 years. We're looking to expand that. I think the governor has a great initiative that she's looking to do.
The House Speaker and Senate President weren't sold on the governor's push for Rhode Island to adopt a line item veto, which would give her the power to veto individual line items in the budget without rejecting the entire document.
We have an excellent budget process. We've been recognized nationally for that. So I always express caution at messing with something that works very well.
By the way, if you notice the ring, that's me in there with the...
Dan Hustles. I was there with him last night.
Yeah. Anyway, overall rating on the speech was?
I don't want to play theater critic. I think I have heard from a lot of people who felt the delivery was was
She had a technical problem.
unexpectedly slow.
Right.
Yeah, and my understanding is they were having teleprompter issues, which might have thrown the governor off a bit. I felt like, I covered just a little bit of Don Kacheri, Lincoln Chafee's sort of odd term, and then I'm now this is the first time I'm in sort of a normal second term of a governor and seeing it. And you can kind of feel the air go out of the tires a little, right? She's not announcing splashy new initiatives. She's trying to protect the things she got in her first term. And, if a governor's done her job right, you know where she stands. I think most of us do, whether you like her or not. And so you're not going to be shocked by the things she put forward, so.
Yeah, just what I expected. Nothing special on the speech. An average speech. Went very long, I thought. Usually your speeches are maybe 10, 15 minutes shorter than she went. But overall, I thought she just gave the normal Gina Raimondo speech.
Well, what's that say, guys? That things are okay?
I think it feels sort of stable up there at the State House. Even as I looked at the tableau there, and it's Mick Mattiello, Gina Raimondo, Donnie Ruggiero sitting together. She's proposing some of the same things. They're not clapping for some of the same things, so we know where that's going. I think there's a deja vu. We've had the same people in charge for quite a while.
And it's an interesting personal dynamic. I mean, not that these things matter a lot, but the Senate President gives her a big hug when she's done. The House Speaker doesn't even think to do that, and she doesn't even look to him. They don't get along. It's not getting better. I hear it's getting worse. And so we'll see. The line item veto thing was interesting. I even tweeted out that the response was terrific. Standing ovation from her, staff, Republicans, and a couple Democrats. Other than that, it's kind of like no chance. And I have a dialogue from that little scrum with the two leaders on it that we'll play on the radio this afternoon. If you miss it, the podcast on PRO. But they are steadfast against this line item veto.
There's no question. We've done a poll a few years back for the Hasselfeld Institute. I think it was like 66% support it. But I don't see that going anywhere in the General Assembly. She has a Republican caucus support, but she doesn't have the Democratic caucus support. So that's basically DOA, I think.
Yeah, that's one where there'd have to be, I think, outside pressure to move them to feel like they have to. I don't think they're ever going to like it, but you could see, I remember when the Ethics Commission's authority over lawmakers was restored, which they'd all been loath to do, it was because of the Ray Gallison scandal. So if there was some forcing thing that came out, but yeah, it's...
Well, I'd push back on that a little. I just think Gina Raimondo is classic toe in the water. If there's 66% support out there for the idea, if she harnessed it and shoved it down their throats, she could make the conversation work. But she's typical, I'll sign on to a concept, I'll be on the record as doing this for the benefit of the people, but I am not going to move my chips, whatever I have left in, on anything significant, because that's not what she does. That's not what she does. The only thing she's ever moved her chips in on hard is the promise. The education promise thing. I mean, it's really the only thing she did, and she got clipped and got 1/3 of what she needed with the CCRI.
And now it's up again this year. So let's see if she goes for it again and really pushes it. Otherwise, that funding is going to disappear after this year.
But I agree. If something popped up in the budget that she just wanted to X out, and I think the marijuana thing is interesting. The dynamic is fascinating, isn't it? She is playing around with the idea of legalizing marijuana. Those two say absolutely not. Yet those two are crafting a deal to grow 6 more compassion centers, meaning places that sell medical marijuana, and let them grow it themselves. And the Speaker more or less is like, I don't care about the 51 cultivators that we legislatively created
just a few years ago.
We don't care if they survive. Something is really fishy about that whole situation, don't you think?
Certainly, I think, I'll stick to what I have on the record, of course, but I will say I think that the money flowing in, Stephanie Shadow did a great digital documentary for us last month on it, and which was eye-opening to me. I've covered it, but seeing how much money is flowing into the marijuana industry, how many influential players are involved in it, I do think it is something that's going to... I mean, heck, the feds have said it, that they're keeping a close eye on the expansion of marijuana across the country.
And that means the elected officials who are creating the expansion.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know what happened in Fall River.
Yes. Thought on that?
No, I agree with Ted totally. I mean, we're going to, over the next year, this is going to play out, I think, and we're going to see actually what happens. And I think that, as you said, the feds are looking at this throughout the whole country. And I'm sure Rhode Island will be one of the places with every place else they'll look at.
All right, we'll see what these guys think are other key elements of the State of the State speech and the budget presentation this week. Stay with us. By the way, stay tuned to that medical marijuana stuff and what Steph is doing and Target 12 is doing and Ted and the whole team, because it's like the Wild Wild West story in Rhode Island, if there ever is going to be one. Minimum wage, jack it up again.
Yes.
for the hardest working people in Rhode Island. That's what she called the minimum wage earners. These kind of cliche things roll off her tongue. I don't think she thinks about that. There are plenty of people out there that aren't working very hard at minimum wage. And there are plenty of people out there who aren't making minimum wage or working their rear ends off.
Right.
I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Do you worry about that kind of branding?
No, I don't worry. I think these
Good
kind of
conversation
speeches,
for talk radio.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's also, there's a part of the state that's almost like watching a play. I in some ways I prefer the end of the legislative session to the beginning, despite the chaos of it, because things are actually happening. This is all talk, and especially for a governor who historically is not great at moving the legislature, you wonder how much of it you're even going to be how much of it is dead on arrival.
He makes a great point, because then it does kind of condition us to kind of not yawn through this, but to take it with a political grain of salt.
Absolutely, Dan. And the thing is, yesterday wasn't the important day. Tomorrow is the important day.
The money.
When the budget comes out, where is the money going to be? She talks about cutting the car tax, supposed to be $114 million this year.
Joe, I have to tell you something on that. I even tweeted right away. She doesn't give Mattiello. It's Mattiello's idea,
right.
And it wasn't even Mattiello's idea during his campaign. His consultants came up with it to pull him out of the morass. He has signed on to an idea that was shoved down his throat. He's the author, and she keeps stealing it from him.
And last
doesn't
year
she?
Well, I think one year
could have
she
turned
gave
to him
him credit,
but she don't. This
Yeah.
shows you. She'd say, "Let's continue the speakers." Look to
Right.
him. The
Yeah.
speaker. No.
And last year she wanted to stretch it out to 7 years, and the speaker
in
said, forget
fact,
that.
one thing I thought to myself was, I don't know if I heard, did she name a single lawmaker in her speech?
No.
Another example, and again, I know that her team gets frustrated with a number of lawmakers, but another one was an easy one would have been in the gun section. Patricia Serpa, sometimes a thorn in the governor's side, has been sponsoring the Ghost Guns 3D Guns ban that the governor supports. Just maybe put her name in it. I don't know.
It's
Maybe
so funny.
Maybe it's an olive branch or something.
I can't find my Twitter right now, but I mentioned that last night to somebody about the car tax and attribution to others. And somebody whose opinions I respect, kind of an insider, said, that's just not how she rolls.
Well, she doesn't have to want to do it.
No.
It just seems like it might be
It's
politically
just
helpful.
not how they roll. Final thought, Joe? We've got about a minute here.
I go back to tomorrow. Where is she going to get the money to pay for these programs?
Oh, by the way, she didn't mention the $200 million deficit at all
No,
in
not
the
at
State
all.
of the State.
That's the thing you're going to start with. $200 million deficit. You got car tax, you got unemployment insurance, $30 million education, the Promise program, more child welfare. Where's the money coming from? Is she going to increase taxes? For example, last year they tried to increase sales tax items. Are they going to try to do the same thing? Are they going to put marijuana in there and try to get money from that? Which isn't going nowhere.
Yeah, I'm with him. We're
not going to see the gambling growth that they were hoping for.
No.
I've never gone into a budget release in my 10 years at Channel 12 as mystified about what I'm going to see tomorrow as I am today, because all I've heard is people ruling out ways of raising revenue and adding things that cost money. Not saying they're good or bad, just at some point you have to make it add up to $10 billion on both sides, and I'm not sure how she's going to do that.
I agree.
Well, the proof will be in the numbers pudding. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll get on McGowan on that opening. Final word and we come back. Stay with us. Now, Tim makes a good point. This play acting with the state of the state is just that. Look, the governor right now is just trying to ride this thing home. So we'll see. Where they come up with a couple $100 million will be the thing that will make that ride home a little bit bumpy. Stay tuned for that. Talk to you on the radio at 3 until 6 tomorrow, and right back here tomorrow night. Have a good evening.